Hi, my name's Sue and this is Sue Maree P, and today I'm going to share how to make saffron buns, a Swedish bun which is a tradition for the 13th of December called Lussebullar, if I've said that correctly. They're a delicious kind of golden bun and they're shaped like a scroll. I'll put an image up above and you put little raisins in them and they're meant to mimic like a cat. They look like an S shape. I've been practicing them and they taste delicious, and I thought I'd share it with you before the 13th of December. Today I'm going to do a combination of white spelt flour and whole grain because I ran out of my white flour and I thought I'm going to do it anyway. So I've got some measurements which I'll put above, but I've just lost my notes. Where has it gone? So I've got 260 grams of white spelt flour and 190 grams of whole grain spelt flour, and I'll put some more measurements above. I've got 80 grams of just white sugar, and I'm going to add a little bit of flavouring. It's not traditional, but I'm going to add a half teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of ground cardamom, and a teaspoon of vanilla sugar. But if you don't have vanilla sugar where you live, you can put vanilla extract or just leave it out. We have some raisins for the little eyes, which we pop in at the end. I've got some warm milk, got the saffron because that's really what the buns are for. There's 1 gram of that because it's so expensive. And I've got an egg for egg wash and 75 grams of melted butter. So the first thing I need to do, my milk is warm. I'm using oat milk because that's what I like baking with, but you can use regular milk. So I'm just going to pop the saffron in there to dissolve it. So I'll give that little bit of a stir around. And the texture of these are like a really fluffy brioche bun. So what we need is yeast, and traditionally in Sweden, I can't speak, they use fresh yeast. So I'm just going to grab it out of the fridge. So I've got my little block of fresh yeast, and this is 50 grams, but I'm only going to do a half batch today, which is 16 buns. So I'm going to use half of this, and I need to grab my big bowl. So just to be precise, I'm going to measure my yeast, but if you can't get fresh yeast or you don't have it in the fridge or the house, you can use dried yeast. So I'm going to use 25 grams of fresh yeast. So as I said, 25 grams of fresh yeast, or you use 7 grams of dried yeast. This texture is so funny. It creates my hairs go like goosebumps on my skin. So in here I'm going to add all my flour, and as I said, I'm going to write the measurements above for that. I'm going to throw the sugar in and all the spice. So now most of that's dissolved, and it doesn't matter if you've got a few little strands still showing, because when it's cooked it actually looks really pretty. And I noticed everyone else had a few strands still showing. So I'm going to hook this on and combine this for a few minutes, and then I'll add my melted butter. I'm going to slowly add the melted butter. I've allowed that to cool a little bit as well. I'm just using unsalted butter, but you could swap it out for like a vegan style butter if that's important. Okay, I've got a little bit of butter left, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little bit more flour. Sometimes when I swap around my flours, I need different quantities. So I'm just going to add about another 50 grams of the whole grain flour. Bread making so much about eyeballing to get the right texture. Let's add that 50 grams. Not going to add all of it, I'm just going to add a little bit. That's looking perfect now. I'm going to zoom you in so you can see the texture. So a close-up angle. Check that out. It's still a bit rough, so I'm going to keep kneading it for about another 2 minutes. The thing with spelt flour, you don't need to knead it as long as regular flour, but let's just knead it on a medium speed for 2 more minutes. Now look at that. It's quite smooth now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this in the bowl so I don't dirty another bowl, and let it rest here. We only need to let it rest covered for 30 minutes. So take it off. If you're doing this by hand, you might want to put plastic wrap or a cloth. This little bowl's got a lid. So now we rest the dough covered for about 30 minutes and then we start pulling it apart and making the buns. So it's been 30 minutes and it's time to bring the dough out. I've just wet my hands and it's looking really good. Our first step, we need to flour the bench. I'm using rice flour. I really like using rice flour with my spelt flour for kneading. So now we need to break it into about 16 pieces at about 60 grams. So let me just try and, I've got my scales here. Just going to turn those on. I've got these fancy new scales that are digital. Okay, 60 grams, Sue. So let's do, we need about 8 per sausage, don't we? So roll them into a ball. Actually, I'm going to stretch them like I do with my little buns. And I'm just going to set them to one side and then we'll do the next step. So I'm just flattening them because I've got little pieces where I've tried to weigh them to be the exact size. Okay, a nice close-up shot. So grab your little ball and roll it into like a long sausage. Sometimes you need to kind of stretch it as you do it. It doesn't matter if that's not perfect because when they bake, they still look really good. So then you grab the opposite end and start rolling. So that one curves into the middle and that one curves the opposite way. So then you create this like S shape. Then we place it on the tray and we keep going. I'll do 2 trays just so they don't stick together. And I'm no expert. I've been doing this for about a month, not 30 years, but I was so impressed at how good they tasted. So grab one end and do like a snail one way and then do the other way. So you kind of turn it into about 3 and then just flip it over. I like so it looks like an S because my name's Sue, so then we'll keep going. If you're making this at home, you're with spelt flour and you think, oh no, my dough's too sloppy and I've made it too wet, don't worry, just try and work with it because they'll still taste really good. Rolled it around, looks like an S. The part where I'm rolling it into the sausage, I don't have much flour on that part. I'm loving my new IKEA island bench that I bought for this house. It's really good for bread making. All right, that one's quite long. That must have been weighing a little bit more. I did make huge ones the first few times I made them, but I found the littler ones I preferred. Grab your egg wash, or the egg is beaten in here with a little dash of water, and I'm just going to brush it over. If you're avoiding eggs and you don't eat eggs, you can add, brush it with a little bit of oat milk or plant-based milk. Now we need to do the eyes, so you dot a little raisin into the swirly bit and push it right down. That's bumped up a bit, so push that in. So cover them with a clean cloth. I just use a clean tea towel and rest it for another 30 minutes and I'll crack on with rolling the others. While we're waiting for our buns to rise, we need to pop the oven on to 200 degrees C fan forced or 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 220 or 440 if you don't have a fan. So get that nice and warm and then you'll be ready to pop the buns in. So it's time to start baking. I'm going to bake these in my warm oven for about 6 to 8 minutes until they're nice and golden brown. They don't take too long, so I'm going to pop them in the oven. So my Lussebullar are all cooked. The second tray I did gave them another coating of the egg wash and they've come out a little bit more golden. I felt the first tray, the egg wash kind of like soaked into the dough. So I'm going to try one. This first tray's been sitting here for about 10 minutes, so it's nice and cool to touch. Look how soft and fluffy they are. I'm going to zoom you in so you can see the texture. So they're quite fluffy and soft, even though I've used a little bit of whole grain flour. To describe the taste, they're not really, it's kind of like a bread-like dough, which is a little bit plain because there's not too much sugar in there. Traditionally, they're not eaten with anything. They're just like a plainer style bun, but we ate them with a little bit of butter, which kind of gave it a bit more flavour. But the texture, even though I've used the whole grain flour, the texture is quite soft. I'll probably freeze half of them because we won't eat them all within the next day, and they defrost really well. So if you've liked my Lussebullar Swedish saffron buns, give it a go, hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here today. And go away and keep eating this. It's almost lunchtime here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, stick around because I'll pop a few other Swedish ideas up above that you might want to watch. Bye.